Welcome everyone to Mailfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about the X-Files Season 1 Episode 19. It's called Shapes. So spoilers for the episode. This is a werewolf episode. Did I know that going into this? I knew they were getting into... We were doing sort of Native American stuff from the description last week. That just says an attack. Okay, I was just looking at the description again if I knew it was a werewolf attack. It's funny because I was saying last time how I typically feel about these types of episodes where the main characters go into a culture. Native American seems to be the most common of them, and it's more kind of about the weird beliefs and superstitions, but something actual supernatural's coming from them because we're on a genre show. It's funny because there was a Native American episode of Smallville, which is not a good show. May I just interject that? But we've been reviewing it, and we're a good chunk into season 2, at least on the Patreon timeline. The public release is a little bit behind, but it was not too long ago that we did an episode where there was Native Americans introduced, and one was not a werewolf, but it was pretty close. It was a shapeshifter into just sort of a regular dog, effectively. So it's just interesting that I've seen two very similar premised episodes of different shows from relatively different time periods. I know in hindsight now it feels like, you know, the mid 90s and the early 2000s feel quite close together. But yeah, there was there was a next wave of TV. So I'm not even going to say that I'm accusing Smallville of ripping this off. I feel like they're both just pulling from the same kind of mythology and the same lore of superstitions. Yeah, I wasn't feeling too optimistic into this because I don't tend to like these episodes that much. Admittedly, I didn't know it was going to be werewolf focused, and I did have fun with some of that. I think the first time, which is the opening scene of the episode, where we get like glimpses of a werewolf attacking someone and getting shot, I thought the direction from David Nutter did handle that quite well to kind of, you know, hide like how bad the werewolf outfit or makeup might have been. I think it less worked later on when the werewolf, it is technically a different werewolf, but when there's a werewolf attack on the old man who owns the ranch, I thought that scene, well directed from a scene pacing and cinematography perspective, you know, it was good in every other way. But the problem I had was that it was kind of goofy just because of the way the werewolf was moving. There was a kind of a shot from behind the werewolf's head as it was like shaking or just sort of grabbing the old man, and it just kind of looked goofy because you could just see the back of the head shaking on the werewolf, and it just kind of felt a little bit hokey and stuff like that. So I think it was an interesting watch just from the perspective of seeing how some good direction is trying to combat the fact that they don't really have a great werewolf outfit or a great werewolf, you know, makeup. I will say the start of the transformation we see, which is, you know, just the face has changed a little bit with makeup and the fangs and the mouth. I thought that looked good. But werewolves are one of those things that I feel like there's far more examples of bad werewolves in movies and TV than there are good. And, you know, I would put forth a lot of things that I like that have bad werewolves in them. Obviously, I'm a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Whenever the werewolves showed up in that, they looked like shit. They just did. There's werewolf movies I like where the werewolves themselves don't look that good. There's a really solid movie called Late Phases from about 2014-ish, I want to say, about an old blind man who has to like take on a werewolf in a retirement community. And it's a solid little movie, but the actual werewolves don't look that good. I feel like there's a short list of genuinely great looking werewolves in movies and TV. I think there's something about the fact that it's usually someone in a suit trying to look animalistic in their movement, but it's really just someone in a fursuit that just inherently can look quite bad if it's not just obscured in the right way, if you've not got someone doing the right kind of performance. Obviously, it's the sort of thing where CG, in theory, could get us to the perfect end goal, but of course the CG still has to look authentic, and more often than not, it looks cheap, because the type of movies that have werewolves in them tend to not be very high budget. So, anyway, all that said, This kind of suffered from the usual trappings of doing a werewolf story on an 80s TV show, albeit with some good direction and moments, and I enjoyed the subject being brought up and the body marks, the scars on the initial werewolf that's been killed. Because the whole premise of the episode, to kick things off, is that this werewolf's attack this ranch, and the ranch owner, the old man, shoots the werewolf, but when they go to see the werewolf, it's turned back into a human, and it's this local Native American young man who he's having a dispute with the local. I was going to say local Americans, the local Native Americans over land, and so it looks like he's just murdered this kid. So Mulder and Scully come in, but of course the old man's like, "No, I saw an animal. I saw a beast. I didn't mean to shoot anyone." And that seems to hold true. Like they could have went down a path where this old man was like super villainous, and we don't really get enough of the dispute to really necessarily take a side, properly. But he doesn't sound like he's happy that he shot someone. He doesn't sound like that type of character. At least he sounds like he's got a fairly measured response to it, all things considered. But he does end up dead when another werewolf kills him. And the big reveal, of course, is that the werewolf he shot in the opening scene was attacking his son, who's a younger man, and he then turns into a werewolf himself. So if you're following the lineage of the werewolf, you can sort of see how it's transferred from the Native American guy to the ranch guy's son, and he's kind of the main threat for the rest of the episode. And again, not knowingly, he is a human being, doesn't want to hurt anyone, but he's turning into a werewolf, and this is all sort of playing out with Mulder and Scully investigating. The rest of the episode, though, sadly, I think, while it's not the most egregious, I felt these tropes, it did just kind of fall into a lot of the same tropes that I don't like about these types of episodes. It's the outsiders coming in, no one wanting to trust them. Eventually, of course, we have the exposition machine of a character, which in this case is the old man who's got the sort of the one weird eye, who knows all about these legends, these shape-shifting legends of Native Americans, who tells them in a dark room what the legends are and that it happens every 8 years and all that stuff. That I'm not going to say it's objectively bad by any means, because I don't think I can say that. I think this is mostly just down to a taste thing, and fundamentally it was going to have to try and really shake things up and do something different. And I think the truth is that these types of episodes that I've seen in multiple shows will largely be inspired because X-Files did them, because X-Files in many ways was the first of the modern genre shows that did all these types of stories. I'm a big Buffy fan, but I can't watch Buffy and not notice that certain types of episodes that Buffy might do were obviously the sort of thing that X-Files might do. Not all, of course. I think Buffy only had like one alien episode in its entire run because it was a very different focus. But X-Files was crossing over into a lot of other supernatural myths, right? We did the Jersey Devil earlier in the season. Basically, what I'm saying is that I would have needed this X-Files episode to do something very different to the normal type of episode this is. However, that's a ridiculous thing to want from X-Files, because X-Files very much set the precedent of what all the other shows that I've seen do this kind of thing have copied. So because of that, it was kind of a losing battle for me, and it was never going to kind of go above that. Although I will say, of course, it was nice to see Michael Horse, who plays the sheriff in this Native American community. He, of course, plays Tommy in Twin Peaks, which I love. I loved that show. I watched through the whole thing in 2017 in time for the new season. Watched the new season as it aired. I had some of the best discussions of my life talking about that show. So it was nice to see him. Obviously, this is just a couple of years after those initial Twin Peaks seasons, so it was nice to see him. It was also interesting, Mulder bringing up the fact that this ties back into the first ever X-File, which goes back to Hoover, and that there was these attacks 40 years ago, and this is kind of like what started the whole thing off. It's interesting to think that the X-Files as a concept started with a werewolf incident and not aliens, just because that's what we associate X-Files with more than anything else. that was an interesting detail. I enjoyed that conversation. I enjoyed Scully saying, you're talking about lycanthropy. No, 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 no. This is a delusion. No one's actually turning into a wolf. Although I don't know if she ever actually says the word werewolf. Maybe she's feeling too, like, I can't even bring myself to say that word, that we're talking about werewolves. And we did get Scully being very close-minded, shall we say? Because the whole setup of the final beats of the episode is that she's alone with the ranchman's son, who's now the werewolf, and he's going to turn into the werewolf alone with her, and she's in their house at night, and Mulder gets there, and we get the creepy him looking about the house with the flashlight, and it's very well done. Like, this is one of the best scenes in the episode because it's just nice, suspenseful horror movie stuff. And then he runs into Scully, and they sort of try to dodge the wolf, and Tommy from Twin Peaks comes in and shoots the shoots the wolf, and it turns out to be the son, obviously, right, the guy. And Scully's like, wait, no, this doesn't make sense, we were here. And then all of a sudden the mountain lion attacked, and they're like, Scully, that wasn't no mountain lion. And I'm like, why did you think that was a mountain lion? Very different size, especially since they make a point of showing us a mountain lion in this episode. I'm like, there's a big size difference between this mountain lion and this werewolf, which is full-grown man-sized. Big thing. The rest of the episode, by and large, falls into Scully and Mulder wanting to do certain things, like do an autopsy on the initial victim, the Native American guy who seemingly was a werewolf. And they see his teeth, and Mulder wants to do a full autopsy to see what else is different. Tommy from Twin Peaks, I'm sorry, Sheriff Charles Scanny? That's not how he's pronouncing it, was it? I'd have to go back and hear how he's pronouncing it. Tommy from Twin Peaks, is it Tommy Hawk, right? He's like, no, I'm not letting you do an autopsy. I have to, and it's clear that he as a character doesn't necessarily believe a lot of these Native American traditions and superstitions, but he knows that he has to still live with all these people that he's serving as a sheriff after the FBI leave, and he's like aware of that. He doesn't want to piss them all off because he's going to have to still rely on them being cooperative with him for anything else in the future. So you can kind of understand where he's coming from, but you also kind of side with Mulder that, hey, we kind of need to do an autopsy on this guy because he might be a werewolf. And of course, Mulder from the start of the episode is like, Scully even says at the start, like, why did you even volunteer for this case, Mulder? This is pretty open and shut. This guy shot someone, and that's the end of it. And of course, Mulder, like, we know as the audience, I know he's suspecting the werewolf somehow. And he finds some sort of like skin that's been what would you call it? Shredded skin. Yes, not shredded, shedded skin. And that sort of like gets that ball rolling. There's a lot of stuff with the initial victim's sister, who's very upset, doesn't want to help the FBI, is very mad at the ranch and the ranch guy's son for their part in his death. And she's a bit of a red herring because we kind of think that at one point, well, I shouldn't say we, Mulder and Tommy think at one point that she's the new werewolf because it can also pass down genetically, and therefore, because that was his sister, they think, oh, maybe she is now the werewolf. But the audience, I think, at this point already know that that's not true. We already have reasons to think that it's the other guy, mainly just because we saw him wake up naked, like after his dad was killed, and he had no knowledge that his dad was dead. It was just, it was very clear what the episode was doing at that point. If anything, I was almost expecting a twist that it wasn't him because it felt so clear that he was the werewolf, and we're just kind of waiting for the characters to catch up to that, which Mulder does when he gets some information from the doctor to did some work on him and found trace of his dad's blood type in his system as if it had been consumed. And it's like, okay, all right. But maybe that's another critique to give it, is that it's wasting time on red herrings for the characters when we, the audience, already know definitively pretty much what's going on. And I mean, I'm not saying that can't work if there's a good sort of natural like excitement of the characters getting to the truth, and this show's all about the truth. We know that. In fact, I forgot to say my catchphrase at the start of this about the truth being around somewhere. apologies. I'm recording this very last minute. Usually I do this the day before the episode goes out. I'm doing this. I'm catching up. The Video Game Awards were last night. I was busy, so this is a coming in hot, shall we say? But yeah, so I think that is a maybe another genuine critique of the episode, is that we're kind of waiting for the characters to get to the point that we, the audience, already know. That's also kind of frustrating, but yeah, it's not the worst episode by any means. I don't think it's embarrassing. I think sometimes when you get episodes like this and they're maybe insensitive towards a culture, it can be quite embarrassing. I don't think this leans that far into anything, but you know, they do spend a lot of time on it. There's a lot of time spent on the initial victim's funeral. You know, they're burning them, they're cremating them, and they're doing a ritual, and there's some chanting going on. And we spend a good couple minutes doing that kind of stuff, which, you know, like maybe this was something they researched, and they were trying to be authentic to like some actual customs, and they were putting a lot of effort into it. And I can respect that, but at the same time, it was like 2 minutes of screen time that wasn't really building anything for the audience. All in all, I'm pretty lukewarm to negative on this episode. It wasn't like a chore to get through or anything like that, but I was a little bit worried as I was watching. I'm like, if I get anything to say about this one, because I don't feel like I do right now. And so, you know, every so often there'll be an episode of not just X-Files, but any show where I'm like, oh God, do I have anything that I actually want to say? And somehow I'll sit here for 15 or so minutes and still have like the thought process of how I feel about the episode, if nothing else. But I don't have any shocking takes or analysis on this one, because fundamentally I think it's a pretty by the numbers and forgettable thing. I will say I do appreciate that Scully referenced that her dad died recently, when she's talking to the ranch guy's son, and she's the one to tell him that his dad's been killed, and he's obviously very upset by that. She actually says, hey, I lost my dad recently. And it's just a little thing, but it's the sort of thing that a lot of TV shows won't necessarily make the effort to like feel like the recent events have happened in the characters' lives. And I enjoy that, particularly in this time period. It's obviously more common now in more serialized shows, but this is very much a case of the week type show that has the ongoing sort of through line is behind it. So very good. Anyway, what's coming next time on X-Files? We have an episode called Darkness Falls. Hopefully it's better than the movie Darkness Falls, because that movie is absolute dog shit. One of the worst things I've ever had to sit through. It's a movie about the Tooth Fairy. It's a horror movie. It's a giant gaping flaming turd. Darkness Falls, the X-Files episode though, here's a description on IMDb. A group of loggers working in a remote forest unearths thousands of deadly insect-like creatures that paralyze and cocoon their victims. Scully, Mulder, and a few others end up trapped there. Oh, trapped. The rest of it sounded fine. It's an interesting location. Cool, we got a monster episode. I like monster stories. All very good. It's that last part, though, that gets me the most excited. But they're trapped there. It makes me think we're getting a quasi-sequel to the episode that was like The Thing, where we've got a group of characters in a remote location, and they're going to be picked off, and I could see myself having some fun with this one. So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. So let me know what you thought of this X-Files in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Helps out a bunch if you do. Keep watching TV. And of course, support everything over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. It helps out a lot. Keeps the show going. Helps more people find everything. So please do hit the buttons and support us on Patreon. But that is me. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?